Um, Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much. I'd like to share my screen if you will permit me. While I also request that you allow me to stand on existing protocol, but special mention to Her Excellency Mrs. Dolapo Simbajo, Mrs. Ajoke Muritala Mohammed, to Pamela Ajaif and the organizers of Dawn, to the Deputy High Commissioner for the UK, Mr. Llewellyn Jones. Thank you very much for that opening address. My colleague in government, the representative of the Honorable Commissioner for Environment, Mr. Tunji Bello, and the General Manager for LASEPA, Dolapo Fashawe, is on this call. Thank you very much. To all the climate and environmental warriors, there are very much to people like Desmond Medikudumi, Pamela, to Pap Tayo, Tosio Dunfa, as various other people who I know have been very steadfast in the struggle to protect our environment. So I have been asked to present something on what we call the One Health paradigm. And I'm going to share that on my screen. And it's something that the Lagos State has embarked upon. It is a WHO philosophy, but not many countries or states are taking it seriously. We are quite serious about the One Health agenda in Lagos State. And so I'd like to talk about some of the attributes of the One. So the One Health represents the holistic approach to health. So we think of ourselves as a medical doctor, we think about human health, but we also recognize that you are only as healthy as your environment. So the environment meaning what you eat and the ecosystem that you live in. So we've stopped thinking of health in a silo, but we've started to think of health as a holistic approach. So we think of it in the three paradigms of environment, agriculture, what you eat, what you breathe, the water you drink, and the stress of your environment. So we all know that nature gives free gifts. We call them free, but nature gives them free, but we are not free to destroy nature, otherwise those gifts will no longer be there. Some of you may not appreciate that some of these gifts are in water, rain, our rivers, the food and drugs we consume from the environment. Of course, the environment helps us to dispose of our waste by biodegradation, degradation. It absorbs carbon dioxide that we produce. It maintains fertile and arable land. It produces fuel for us. It protects the environment from erosion. We use nature for recreation, for spiritual sanctuaries. It maintains our biodiversity and helps us to regulate our temperatures, our seasons. And of course, we all know that our green ecosystem produces the oxygen that we are so dependent upon. Now, these are free. They're free, given to us freely by nature. Now, there is a cost to that. The world ecosystem is valued at twice the global GDP, almost pitched at $125 trillion a year. Now, the natural capital can be defined as the world's stock of its natural assets, which are what I just described. Now, with natural capital, when we draw down, just like any bank account, it is an account. When we draw down too much on the stock of nature, of environment, we will run our ecosystem, our planet, into a deficit. And we need to pay that back. You cannot draw what you do not deposit on. If we keep overdrawing down on our stocks and our natural capital, without allowing it to recover, we run into very serious risks of regional and global ecosystem collapse. Overexploitation can be catastrophic, resulting in floods, droughts, increasing zoonotic events, that is the movement of pathogens from nature to human beings, just like what we've seen with Lassa fever, Ebola, and what we're currently going through as a global pandemic of COVID-19. Now, interesting to note that drawing on natural capital has no geographical or national boundaries. If one part of the world draws down too much on nature's capital, it affects the whole world. And so we must be cognizant about that. And as a global community, we must embark upon a collective awareness and respect for nature's capital. So what is the setting in Africa? Now, some of you may be familiar with this demographic profile, where it is anticipated that in the next 50 years or so, the population of Africa will treble or even quadruple from about 1 billion, where we are now in 2020, to about 4 billion in about 50 years. Conversely, you can see that in the Northern Hemisphere, as represented by Europe there is a stability of population, and in fact, a slight decline. So what does that mean for us in Nigeria? Well, coupled with what we all are experiencing in the Southwest, and particularly Lagos, there is an inbound migration, and that is going to result in what we describe as expanding megacities. And these expanding megacities come with major health toxicity and biosecurity threats. Now, these are the typical challenges that these megacities in Africa have. They're usually poorly planned as they expand. They lack necessary infrastructure to cope with the population growth and the waste that is generated by the human footprint within these megacities. There's insufficient clean water. Most of our energy is from wood or fossil fuel. Our air is becoming toxic. Our waters are becoming dead. And we have a lot of chemical and sewage pollution on the surface and in our water tables. Our coastal cities are becoming despoiled. So it is the agenda of this government, and you all know about the themes agenda of Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and with great vision and futuristic thinking, you can see that under the second pillar there, we have lumped health and environment together, and that indeed personifies the One Health agenda. We link health to environment. I think that is incredibly futuristic of this government, to show and demonstrate to the people of Lagos that we do not separate the integrity of the environment from the health of our community. So, the first thing that we're conscious about is waste management. And there are different kinds of waste. As you can see in this schema, there's biodegradable waste, there's e-waste from all the gadgets that we use, our cell phones, our computers, there's hazardous waste from industry, there's medical waste, and there's non-degradable waste such as plastic, glass, and all those things that take a long time to disintegrate, and of course our sewage. And these are the components of waste. And if we don't properly process each and every one of these categories of waste, then we are at risk of despoiling our environment. Now, one of the key things that we're talking about is deforestation. But let's go back in history. The Guinea Savannah Belt, which ranges all the way from Senegal down through Ghana, Nigeria to Cameroon, was a very rich and lush part of the world 100 years ago. Pre-colonialism, it was rich. At the point of independence, it was relatively degraded, and we have continued to despoil our environment. That in Nigeria at the moment, we are below 5% of where we should be. 25% of our country should be maintained with intact ecosystems, and we are below 5%, and that trend is not slowing down. I wonder where it is going to lead us. This is what it used to look like, lush forests with that integrity of ecosystem, capture of moisture, good seasonal predictability, rain, clean water. biodiversity. And as a result of this excessive deforestation and logging, this is what our environment is beginning to look like. Totally destroyed, and this is anywhere you would like to go to in Nigeria, this is the kind of environment that you will see. And this is causing the Sahara Desert and the dryness of the north to permeate down south, causing lots of conflicts for us and the rising incidence of emerging infectious diseases or outbreaks of pathogens of high consequence, as we're experiencing now. With over the last 5 years, we've had Ebola, Lassa fever, and now we have COVID. And you can see from this graph that the incidence of these kinds of terrible outbreaks and pandemics are increasing exponentially, especially across the equatorial part of Africa and West Africa. We're particularly concerned about the air we breathe. This kind of image around and about Lagos or southwest of Nigeria is very, very disturbing, where we have no regard for the amount of pollution that we put into the air. And you can see on a smoggy day like this, the amount of particulate pollution within the air, and you can see there that Lagos is competing very well with some of the most polluted parts of the world. And this graph shows you the WHO estimates for the amount of pollution that we should be tolerating. We should have less than 10 parts per million of sulfur in the air that we breathe. And Nigeria there in the light blue is between 50 and 500, well above the acceptable limits of fossil fuel pollution in the air that we're breathing in this country. We're very, very concerned about groundwater, wetlands, streams, lagoons, and our coastal waters. Our streams that used to be alive, full of biodiversity and the complexity of water aquaculture is more or less disappearing. Many of our coasts look like this across the West African region. And on the surface of our Earth is whether we're producing fossil fuel pollution of the ground, whether it's sewage, whether it's industry, all of that percolates down into our water table. And if we tap into that water table, you will find that there is a reflection of the human footprint on the surface of the Earth. Many parts of Lagos now, if you tap into the water table, that water is not useful, neither for domestic use in terms of animal propagation or for human use. And we've had several scenarios about this. You will all remember the situation around one of our famous girls' boarding school in Lagos, where water was drawn up from the water table and it was heavily polluted with bacteria that had very, very disturbing antimicrobial resistance patterns that caused severe sickness and suffering amongst our school children. So in a nutshell, this is the One Health paradigm. It surmises to tell us that human health is totally dependent on the environment in which we live. There are several factors that are affecting the health of human beings: the water we drink, the loss of biodiversity, the depletion of the natural air in which we live, desertification and land degradation, and of course the ubiquitous climate change that we're all subject to globally. All of these have an impact on us as human beings and our health. And this is really the sum total of the One Health paradigm. And it is our responsibility to address each and every one of these factors. So what is this administration doing? Well, the Lagos State has the One Health strategy. It's comprised of several key ministries: the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Environment and its agencies, LASEPA and LASPARC, Ministry of Urban Planning, the Ministry of Justice, to ensure that we have legislation that regulates the activities and the human footprint on the environment in which we live, and of course, the Ministry of Agriculture, to ensure that the food chain that we consume as Lagosians and as Nigerians has integrity in terms of its production its preservation, and its storage. To sum this all up, we are developing what we call the Biosecurity Integrity Policy, which is in a draft form at the moment, but it will eventually, we are already practicing elements of this integrity policy, and eventually it will become an act. And we have commissioned the Biosecurity Governance Council for almost about 9 months now. And their main responsibility across the board is to try and ensure that as government, we follow the principles of restoration of the environment and avoidance of toxicity and despoilation of our ecosystems and the biosphere in which we are so dependent upon. So in a nutshell, Lagos State has a green agenda. We are hoping that we can roll this out as aggressively as we can, and we're so thankful that the civil society are part of this and aggressively championing the paradigm of environmental integrity and protection, and most importantly, restoration where we have caused damage. On that note, thank you once again for being able to participate in this webinar, and to congratulate you on the amount of awareness that you're generating in the state and partnering with state to ensure that we have something that we can hand to the next generation, which demonstrates our cognizance and our higher consciousness of the importance of ecosystem integrity. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant rest of the proceedings.